Hey, welcome everyone. We've got a good seminar this week, how to manage your real estate and attract great tenants in 2025. We've done this seminar pretty much at the beginning of every year, but it's very, very important this
Yeah,
year
it's nice.
because some of our landlords are having challenges with both the rental rate they're charging and keeping tenants in the units.
Yeah, Tim, I love this because this is the most important part of becoming a landlord and becoming an investor. Tim always says it. If you've read our book, Fearless Real Estate, he always says we're dealing with people. You have to look after them.
What we're going to do with this seminar is we're going to go over all of our little tips and our strategies that we use every day to get tenants in any rental property. So some of these, maybe for the experienced landlords, they may know most of these tips, but we can guarantee that even the experienced landlords, are going to find something in this seminar that go, hey, I haven't done that. I'm going to try that to keep my tenants a little longer. It's going to be challenging this year. We're going to see rental rates fall a little bit. We have more inventory coming online. You can see a lot of purpose-built rental buildings going up. There's a lot more new homes with basement suites that investors have bought in the outskirts. That stuff is coming online. So we're seeing a lot more inventory. That means that you have to, mold your business in a specific way to attract those tenants so that they pick your property over someone else's. So to start off, we're going to start off with telling you managing tenants, becoming a landlord, being a landlord, it's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. It's a business.
Yeah.
We can try and do as many things, teach you as many tips and tricks to make it as easy as possible. But you have to realize that it's a job. You own a sizable asset. You're going to have to roll up your sleeves and get to work getting some great tenants.
Yeah, and I see this line here, when your tenant's toilet doesn't work or their furnace is on the blink, it becomes an emergency. You know what? You got to be on it. You got to be there. You got to look after them. When we get a call from a
Now, hold
tenant,
on. When he says you got to be there, he doesn't mean you have to go fix the
yeah,
toilet.
yeah,
You have to have a plumber in your contact info so that you
yeah.
can send him there.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because I'm definitely not going there to do that. But and for you guys that know us, I mean, Tim is a lot more handy than I am. I am not handy at all. Like, I own a lot of real estate and I barely fixed anything. I think I gave it a go once or twice, but I got to be honest with everybody out there. When something went wrong with my rental properties, I actually put a smile on my face and I was happy to fix it. No problem at all. These properties, and this is what you have to remember when you're investing in real estate, this magic thing happens. It happened last year. I believe it's going to happen again later this year. And the magic thing is that when you own real estate, it just increases in value. Now, we don't have a crystal ball on when it's going to happen, but this is the bonus to real estate investing. Yes, you can calculate your mortgage getting paid down. Yes, you can calculate your cash flow. You can do a number of things. Our favorite saying is, if you're not cash flowing, you're not trying. You could do student rentals. You could do furnished apartments. You can do Airbnb. You can do rent to own. You can do lease options. You can do so many things to increase your rent that you can make it win-win. It's just how much time do you have to do it? But getting back to problems with your properties. First of all, when Tim and I are selecting a property for our clients, we're only taking on properties that need work when we understand the work that it needs, the amount of money that it has to go into it. And we want to get the properties like the townhouse we bought in Acadia last night. We want to get it to a point where there's not going to be phone calls every month, right?
Yeah.
So we know that we bought a rundown property last night. We know Alex, who bought it, knows that. That was the plan. We're forcing appreciation on that property by doing renovations. And we're going to get it to the point where the tenant and the landlord, Tim, this is key, that the landlord is 100% happy and what would you say, Tim? Not just happy, but proud. That's the other word,
Yeah.
proud of owning that property. And I could tell you this complex in Acadia, Tim, they redid all the windows. They redid the roofs. They redid the siding. The complex, when you drive in, looks brand new.
Yeah.
Right? So you're already proud driving in. We're just not proud going into this unit, which we will get into that state. So what I'm trying to say is any problems that that our landlords have, we're here to address it, right? And it doesn't have to be that stressful.
Yeah, and you shouldn't be all stressed when a tenant does call and say there's an issue. You should be proactive, have them call early so that if it's a little water leak, it doesn't become a big water leak. You can have it addressed before it becomes a big problem. We'll go over that, making your tenants accountable a little later on. But you want to address these things. So like, as I said, you'll be proud of owning it and you'll be able to keep those tenants longer. And when they do move on, you'll be able to attract other great tenants. You also have to charge the right rental rate. Now, we've had a number of calls from clients who just take possession of a new rental property, put it on RentFaster, put it on Facebook Marketplace. 3 days later, they call us and say, I've only had one call on this property.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
because of the rental market we've been in for the last 3-4 years, properties are rented like that.
Yeah.
Right? You put them on RentFaster, you got 20 inquiries and you got it rented the next day. Go back 5 years, go back 10 years, go back 15 years, early 2000s. When we were trying to rent properties in the early 2000s, it was kind of challenging.
Yeah.
You know, your margins were very, very tight on your cash flow, and you didn't get a whole lot of quality tenants if your property wasn't high quality.
We actually used to advertise our properties in the Calgary Herald. So
Yeah.
that's how old we are, okay?
We had to phone them up
Yeah.
and tell them what the ad would be.
Yeah. So we used to do that, and now times have changed. And now that we're talking about where to advertise, first step is basically what we love to do is get permission off when we're buying the property. We like to get permission off the listing agent to use those photos. So those photos are professional photos. You do have to get permission. And then we like to actually use the description and just alter it, Tim, to a rental purpose, not a sale purpose. So we actually like to get permission on the photos. And then, you know what, we actually like to even get permission. We'll go as far as helping our clients out to get permission to show the property before we actually even own it. So renting it out. If you've seen a video on Crew TV, Nicolay out in Chestermere, we actually have rented numerous properties out before we actually own them. And we do that because when you rent the property out on day one, your mortgage is 1 month later. So you're actually in front a whole month's rent, which will boost your cash flow. And you won't have to worry about that.
And another tip on pictures, if you've owned a rental property for a while and you're still using the pictures from 5 years ago, from 10 years ago, when the rooms were a different color, when you had a different type of flooring in there, when there was carpet instead of vinyl plank, go in there and update your photos and try and take the brightest, most accurate photos you can. You could take them on your phone, but make sure all the lights are on, every room looks good, it's clean. If there are tenants' furniture in there, make sure it's good furniture. If it's scrappy furniture, wait till they move out and then take new pictures. But the pictures are going to be half of what sells the property. All you have to do is look at a real estate listing for sale. If there's very, very nice pictures, people are going to be attracted to that house. If there's, terrible pictures that were taken when the lights were off and it was a cloudy day outside and someone used their phone and it just doesn't look good, you're not going to show the appeal of that property.
Yeah, and so where do you put this advertisement? You know what? We love RentFaster. You can't beat it. 90% of tenants are looking on there. We do advertise on Facebook Marketplace. We find the quality of tenants that are coming from Facebook Marketplace aren't as good, but at the same time, we just bought a place in Okotoks, and for some reason, everyone in Okotoks is on Facebook Marketplace. So it depends where you are to get it rented, but here in Calgary, definitely RentFaster. And then this whole slide is the key for you to succeed, is charging the right rent, okay? As I said, in Cochrane today, I was looking. I could tell that one townhouse was a stacked townhouse, meaning there was another townhouse above it. And the townhouse that I was looking at, or the client was looking at buying, was a regular townhouse with a garage and it had a backyard. And so they're two different products. You have to compare apples to apples. And if your property's in a cul-de-sac or your property has extra visitor parking or more green space or across the road from South Centre Mall, then there's different prices compared to a complex that's tucked away back in the community. If the C train or transportation is close by, all of these factors. So you really have to keep an eye on that complex over time, because right now I'm looking at a complex in Coach Hill. We bought it, Tim, last year for Adienka and Emanuela in Coach Hill, and there's no listings in there, so I can't tell what today's rents are because no one's renting it.
Yeah, I had an inquiry from a
Yeah.
client that we just bought a place from. They're in Kamloops, and they bought a couple of rental units here in Calgary in the last year.
Yeah.
They were asking about a couple of other buildings, one by Mount Royal College and another one off Richmond Road in the southwest. And they wanted to know what the potential rents would be for these units that were for sale in there. And there's nothing for rent in there.
Yeah.
And I looked around at buildings in the vicinity, and there was nothing for rent in those buildings either. So it's very difficult to find out what the rental rate is until you actually see other people put their places on the market, and then they get rented. So you really, really have to delve into the stats. Rent Faster has a really good feature where they will tell you the average rents for each community.
Yeah, I like that.
So if you're looking at 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, they will tell you what the average rent for is in each specific community. Search out those places where you could find the average rental rates, and then you'll have a better understanding.
Yeah, so you really have to keep an eye on it. Don't just jump in like we're hearing of these people bought new properties and now the rents are down $400 on each suite. Could you imagine $800? So the other factor to that is supply. When you're buying in an area, you have to understand what's being built around that area. That's why we refuse right now to go into new communities. We just know when you go up to the end of Calgary in the north, there's communities up there. Glacier Ridge, is it Ambleton? Is it Ambleton?
Hamilton, yeah.
I mean, next step is Airdrie, right? And guess what Airdrie's doing right now? They've got oversupply issues. So now you have oversupply in the north of Calgary, and then you have oversupply in the south of Airdrie. So it's just going to continue and continue and continue. So you have to be very, very careful of that. Just quickly, if anyone has any questions tonight, just put in the chat. We're happy to answer. There's nothing we cannot answer. But at the same time, supply issues or supply levels is key as an investor. There was years, I'm talking years, maybe 6 years, Tim and I refused to buy clients' properties behind us here back then it was called the Connaught. Now it's called the Beltline. But we refused because towers went up, right? And when towers go up, 300 units, especially if they're rental purpose buildings, 300 units get released and then they flood the market. And so that's what's happened this year. You have all of these smaller buildings because the rezoning policy came in, right? And so in all these communities, they're building smaller apartment buildings, like Truman's going in, rental purpose built buildings, because CMHC did the MLI Select 5% down, which developers can use to build rental buildings.
They're getting a break on the GST if they're building a rental purpose building.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. So guess what? It's flooding the market. So guess how many rental properties there are in Calgary? Over 8,000. Okay, so why would we go and buy a new community when we know that problem's happening?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so now we're going to get into tips to attract great tenants. It used to be in the past year or two that once you put a rental ad on there, if you get 30 or 40 applicants on there, you can weed them out, and then you have to make a choice between 5 really great tenants, and you didn't have a problem there. Well, what we're finding now with the oversupply is there's probably only 1 or 2 great tenants of all the people that apply for your property, and you have to figure out which one that is. So the first thing you want to do is have them fill out an application before they even see the property. They can fill out the application that comes on Rent Faster and just have it sent to you, or everyone who inquires, you can email them your own rental application and have them fill it out, say, I would like to see that before I go and show you the property.
Yeah. The other way around that is just to have a notepad handy. And so you're texting or calling. Normally it's all done on text these
Yeah.
days, but you can call the tenant and just have a chat. You know, when they do text you, because it all comes in text, say, hey, can I have a quick chat? I'll, and tell you about the property. And really what you're doing there is you're calling the tenant to find out when they're moving in. Well, we're in March right now. So if the tenant says I'm moving in June 1st, well, you're not going to spend a lot of time with that person. We never say no to a person. We never ever do that. Okay, so I want to stress this. Never say no, I'm not interested. What we love to do is do a mini open house. When I say mini, it's 30 minutes max. Okay. And so we like to do a mini open. It could be on a Wednesday afternoon, could be on a Saturday afternoon, Saturday morning, whatever. But we like to say, okay, you know what, you want June 1st. What's your name? John. Okay, John. Well, now I know John. I'm not even talking to him at the mini open house, but I want him to come because the more people at the open house, it will drive an application coming forward. So it's as simple as that. But you know what? It doesn't matter. The next thing you want to know, other than when are they moving in, is how many people are living in the property. And I can tell you for the suited property owners out there, the biggest mistake they make is putting too many people in their properties. Suited properties are meant for normally 3 people upstairs max and maybe 2 people down. I would love 1 down and maybe 2 up, but at this time, as Tim is saying, that if there aren't a lot of applications or people looking at it, you really have to work out who you want in your property. Some of these, we ran into an issue last month where one of our clients had a half duplex. He put in a family of 5 and a big dog upstairs and 2 gentlemen downstairs with a big dog. And it did not work out. It was a half duplex. You can't have 7 people, 2 pets in a property. It just won't make sense. So getting back to it, we love to do the mini open house. So when people call us, text us, say, yeah, I'm showing it. We love to put it off for 2 or 3 days. So then we're getting more calls from people out there that may call us to see the property and say, yeah, hey, I'm showing it on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Come down. There's going to be a bunch of people looking at it. I'll be there. Looking forward to meeting you. But I love asking those questions. I love to ask where they're working. If they're on government assistance, we don't say no to those people. You choose who you rent to. So if you have someone on government assistance, or you have someone that's an engineer on $150,000 a year, who are you going to go with? Okay. And you want to have, once again, properties that are going to look good enough to attract good tenants. That's the thing at the end of the day. And so what we do is we get everybody to come to that open house, and then we know who is who and who to talk to.
Okay. Can we move on to point number 2?
Yes, sure. Okay, we're only at 2?
2.
Okay, sorry, guys.
Okay, second point is make the tenants pay for their own credit check. We discovered this actually a few months ago when we were talking to some guys who run an Airbnb business. And we were always concerned in the last few years when you get 40 applicants, and a lot of them are really, really good applicants. And it costs you about 25 to 35 bucks to check the credit on every applicant. And you're like, well, that really adds up if I'm checking the credit on 25 people. And these guys just said, well, there's a handy little button on Rent Faster where the tenant can click that and get their own credit report done. And then they can just send that to you. So what we do is we offload the cost onto the potential tenants where they pay for their own credit check and then they send it to you. So we thought this was brilliant because then you can have every single applicant that you're interested in check their credit and send it to you, and it doesn't cost you a thing.
Yeah.
That was brilliant.
And there is a way for them to do it on their bank. Like I did receive one that someone spent on their bank and it was free. Like it was free for them. They just checked their credit score through Scotiabank, took a screenshot and said, here it is. And you know what? That was good enough for us as well. So there are ways around that. And at the end of the day, you want to see that. And Tim, we want to stress as well, some tenants are tenants for a reason. Like Tim always ask the tenants, am I going to find anything on your credit report, or is there anything on there? And they may say, hey, you know what, I had a car and I couldn't make the payments, or I had a mobile phone and I didn't, stuffed up there. And then at the end of the day, you got to go with your gut feeling on the person. Where are they working now? Do they have a spouse? Do they look like they can keep up with payments now? And rarely now, and we want to just tell you the dynamics of the Calgary market right now. The quality of tenants out there are unbelievable. You're getting people that just moved to Canada. I've got some tenants living in one of my properties that earn like $300,000 a year. And I'm like, why are you guys living in my place? Like, why are you here? And they're like, well, we just moved here and we're just getting used to it. And, they're both in IT. And so there are good quality people out there, which is great because Tim and I have gone through different times. We can definitely tell you that. And so you want to make sure that you want to work with this person in, for the next year, because you are signing a year lease with them, and you want to make sure that, you're okay with them. You don't feel like, you owe them a favor. It is a business. At the end of the day, we have to stress that. Tim and I were on the phone with clients tonight that are having problems with their tenants in Marda Loop, who are getting noise complaints. And we're not even managing this property for our tenants, but they just bought a place in Ogden through us, and they're doing they're legalizing the basement suite. They're new investors, and they're having problems with the property they own. And you know what? At the end of the day, we went out of our way today to talk to the building manager, and the building manager said, Azad, you know what? This is like the fourth or fifth complaint we have, and we had to fine them $150 for a noise complaint. And our clients were so nice that they were sticking up for the tenant, saying, "Oh, we want to see evidence." And I had to tell our investors today, you know what? It's on the tenants. They have to sort it out now. They have to, if they want to dispute the fine because of the noise complaint, it's on them. Okay. And we want to tell you the reverse quickly of tenants. Okay. Tenants, and Tim and I have seen this, and we've seen this last month in Winston Heights, where tenants can take advantage of the situation. And this is what a big point is of doing your homework on the amount you're going to charge for rent. Because as soon as your rent is higher, and we're seeing this now because tenants signed last year at high rents for properties, and what they start to do, and we're not saying all tenants, but what we start to see is tenants complaining, okay? And when they become professional complainers, they can make your life like hell, okay? Yeah. And so these tenants were complaining about health issues and to our landlord, and Tim and I had to go over there and talk to them, and they were missing rent, okay? So at the end of the day, we had to put it back on them. And the rules, Tim, in Alberta, just quickly, for landlords is very, very strict. If they're not paying rent, you could have them out in 14 days. It doesn't matter what the circumstance is. If they're not paying rent, they're out. So we have our rights as a landlord, but we're also here to tell you guys to work with good people and make sure that, you know what, you don't feel afraid of them, or you're not overprotecting them. It can go both ways.
Okay.
Point number three.
Okay. We got to pick it up. Okay. We're never going to get through this. Okay. Be strict with your time. When you go to show someone a property, or whether you have an open house, you got to make sure that whoever is coming to see the place, the potential tenants, are going to show up on time. If they're half an hour late and they don't have an excuse, or they cancel at the last minute, guess what? They're probably not the tenant that you're going to rent to. If they're late, they're probably going to be late with their rent, and they're, just not going to be that tenant. If their car looks messy, they're probably going to make your house look messy. So be strict with your time. And that leads to the next point, be clear, set clear expectations for maintenance. So if you have them shoveling the sidewalk, it's in your lease. If you have them cutting the grass, if you have them maintaining the property a little bit, make sure that they are maintaining the property, make sure they are shoveling the sidewalk, because you can get fined as a homeowner if someone slips and breaks their ankle on that sidewalk because it hasn't been shoveled. So you have to be clear with what is in your lease and what the tenant's responsibilities are. And if you're clear up front they know what their responsibilities are, guess what? That relationship is going to get along fine. He says provide written instruction to avoid understandings. That becomes part of your lease. Every tenant responsibility should be outlined in that lease.
Yeah, especially if you're dealing with like questionable tenants. Like you could have professional tenants that they're working professional, they're going to look after the property, you just know. But as Tim said, if you have a doubt, everything has to be written down, right? In the lease.
Okay, the next one is maintain open communication. Make sure that you're communicating with your tenants. I don't care whether it's email, whether it's text, whether you have a nice phone conversation with them all the time. Make sure that they can get a hold of you when they have to, and you can get a hold of them when they have to. We're managing a property for one of our clients. It's an up-down property. The downstairs tenant is always a little bit late with rent. Well, I need to know exactly why she's late, how she's going to be late, how long she's going to be late for, and I need to communicate this to the owner. So I have a quick response via text with this tenant, and we resolve these issues very, very quickly as they come up.
Yeah, so and tenants do run into issues on their own. Right?
Yeah.
They got their own lives. So for example, for that young lady with the daughter or son, I don't know, daughter, she's getting spousal support. The spousal support comes in late, and the rent's late. And that's life. So now we're in a situation. We communicate that to our client, who's a landlord, investor, and we have to work through it.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. It's this it is a business, but at the same time it is life as well. And so things do pop up like that, and you have to understand that as landlord.
Yeah. The next one is document everything. Document disputes, document if any issue happened with the property. If there's any maintenance issues, your receipts are going to be your documentation. So if the tenant complained about a leaky toilet, you send a plumber over, you've got that receipt, it's got the time on it, it's got the date on it. You know when that issue was taken care of. So the tenant cannot, complain about that issue after it's been resolved. Documentation, we'll get into it a little later in record keeping and expenses and revenues and stuff like that. But it's very, very important when you have a rental property. Because you need to have a record for everything. If down the road, say Revenue Canada wants to audit you and they want to know where your expenses were and what your revenues were, and you don't have any paperwork for that, you're going to lose that. You're going to lose that appeal against Revenue Canada. But as far as tenants go, if you're documenting everything that goes on, these tenants that Azad was talking about today in that little condo, they had complaints from neighbors, and that will be documented with the property management company. So they have documentation on their end. It's good for the landlords to have documentation on their end so they can go back to the tenants and say, look, this happened on this day, this complaint was on this day, and this complaint was on this day. Maybe we better reevaluate this tenancy.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, the last one is be professional and firm. Always be respectful with your tenants. You got to understand their people as well. That's their home, right? You may think of it as, oh, this is my investment. I want to make X amount of dollars on it. But to the tenant, that's their home. And if you respect their living space, you tell them you're going to respect, their time and that, and you want equal respect from the tenants so they look after your property.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so renting to the right tenants. We always use this picture on the right because we could be driving through a neighborhood showing people properties, and we can pick out the rental properties in the middle of summer just by looking at the grass level. If you see something like the house on the right, that's pretty obvious. Pretty much it's going to be a rental property.
Yeah, so how do we protect you guys from having the house on the right? We actually work off a net rent, gross rent. So basically, it all depends on the tenant once again, right? So if it's a tenant that's questionable, we would work off a $200 fee. So if the rent was $2,000, we would either charge them $200 on top. So our lease would state that they get a discount if they pay the rent on time, if they shovel the sidewalk, if they cut the grass, if they take the trash out on time, if they get no noise complaints. They won't get charged $2,200 per month. They will get charged $200. They'll get a discount of $200 and be charged $2,000 per month. So once again, it depends on the quality of the tenant, but that is our way of protecting our properties and making sure they don't look like this.
Yeah, and on the flip side, when you're trying to attract that great tenant, you want your house to look like the one on the left and not the one on the right. So if it goes on the rental market, you're gonna go in there and you're gonna cut that grass and get rid of those weeds and make it look nice and neat. So you're gonna attract better tenants. Because if you have these really qualified, nice tenants coming to look at the property and they see all those weeds in the front yard, guess what? They're gonna think a little less of you as a landlord and they're gonna move on to the next property that doesn't look like that.
Yeah, and you know what? At the end of the day, now we're taking photos. So photos tell a story of everything. We go in, take photos of every room on the outside. So if the property isn't looking like how we handed it over, then we can show it.
Yeah.
We've got proof. So it's as simple as that. It's black and white. Now, the thing is that you have the damage deposit. We actually have got a form that we've worked out costs on repairing every little issue that can go wrong.
Yeah.
So we have that, and we actually hand it to them when they rent the property and tell them, well, if the carpets are soiled, this is the cost to clean it. If it needs painting per room, I think we've got a cost per room. So we're down to each and everything that could go wrong in the property to make sure that it stays the same. And we always say this, we've got clients that have nice cars. One of them has a Ferrari, and you know what? We could tell you that Jimmy would not give the key to anybody, and his Ferrari, it's a very nice Ferrari, Tim, but your rental properties out there are probably worth more than that Ferrari.
Probably 3 or 4 times more.
So we're telling our clients that you wouldn't give the key to anybody. And the flip side to that is we always say that rundown properties, and this is why for Crew Property Leasing, we only take on quality properties and quality landlords. Rundown properties make for rundown tenants. We always say that. So, if you have a good, well-kept, maintained property that shows really well, it doesn't have to have the latest appliances or anything like that. It could be original condition, right? But shows really, really well. You know what? You're going to get good tenants. It's as simple as that. And if you don't, then you're going to attract bad tenants.
Yeah. Tenants like these ones on the left.
Yeah, there you go. Cheech and Chong.
Yeah, so we get this question a lot, and we've been getting this question ever since marijuana's been legalized in Canada, is do you guys allow people to grow marijuana plants in your houses, or do you allow people to smoke marijuana? The answer is 100% no, and that goes for cigarettes as well. So cigarettes and marijuana, we do not allow any of that inside any of our properties, whether they're our own or whether we manage them. Mm-hmm. It's just a flat out no. And because I'm not sure all of you have been in a house that's had smokers in it for 30 years, but we go into the odd house now and then that's had a homeowner living there for 30, 40, 50 years, and they've been a heavy smoker. And that house, every single thing in that house basically smells like cigarette smoke. It's very, very hard to get that smell out of there. And the same thing with pot. If you've got tenants that are smoking pot all day long in the house, it's very hard to get that smell out and to rent it out to the next people. You're tearing out carpet, if there's drapes in there, you're tearing them out, you're repainting the walls, repainting the ceiling. It's very hard to get that smell out.
Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is we're just going to let you guys watch this little video that we made. We interviewed a tenant in Forest Lawn, and we talk about the type of neighborhoods that you should rent in and the type of houses that you should rent in. This house, one of our clients had it, was actually an infill in Forest Lawn. So it was a very nice house in a very bad neighborhood. Yeah. And we interviewed the tenant about what goes on in that neighborhood and what it's like to rent.
And we did it for a reason. We did it because a lot of investors were going in Forest Lawn, and we didn't want to tell them not to go do that. We would be getting calls. So, about a year ago, and so our investors in Forest, we just would not. There's so many things going on there that it's not turning around anytime soon, and there's no need for it. But we do have some experienced investors that are investing in Forest Lawn. But for the new investors, watch this video. It's quick, just to show you why we would not invest in Forest Lawn.
Yeah, so hopefully we can get some sound through here. We'll try it, right? Let us know in the chat if you don't get any sound with this.
No sound says.
Okay, let me just try this again. We'll have to back it up a bit.
Hey guys, it's Tim and Azad. We're down here in Forest Lawn and we're talking to Trina. We're getting ready to sell this beautiful home. Trina, how long have you lived here for?
3 years.
3 years, and you keep it unbelievably really nice. It's clean. I love it. And we just wanted to get Trina's take as a tenant down here in Forest Lawn, because we get investors all of the time saying, why don't we go and invest here? And we're like, you know what, you really have to have thick skin. And Trina was just going over what she's seen since she's lived here. So Trina, let's talk about Forest Lawn and why it would be, why Tim and myself would tell investors what we just told you, what we're telling them. Where should we start?
I think it would be the last ungentrified neighborhood in Calgary. So that is definitely a pro.
Yes.
Because Inglewood, Ramsey, Bridgeland, all of those have already been to that state where they've cleaned up, they've reduced the homeless situation. This is sort of like the last of the untouched, a little bit rougher neighborhoods left in the city. And I love that, Trina, because the values here are unbelievable. Like, we're listing this infill for $450, and it is stunning. But what is going on your front lawn and in the back and around the streets here? There is not just this outreach center, but there's a handful of outreach centers throughout this neighborhood to help with drug problems, prostitution, homelessness. So you do get a migration of that sort of population into the area. And because all of these things are close, occasionally you will have people who might set up a homeless camp in between the two houses.
Yeah.
I do find a number of used condoms and needles in and around the property in the morning, sometimes in the evenings. You will see that. There is a lot of transient people up and down on the street. A lot of sirens, because there have been, with the outreach center, this becomes like a community sort of hangout for homelessness or drug addicts, knowing that they can get needles here, knowing that drug dealers will be in and around the area, knowing that there's a drug exchange, knowing that they have a clientele to sell to here.
Yeah.
So you see drug deals, you see drug dealers, you see prostitution, you see homelessness, you see used paraphernalia.
And it's real. It's real. And this is
and then the sirens coming in, because there have been some stabbings, some shootings. There have been a few. It happens. There is some gang activity, so you do hear gunfire. It's not uncommon not to hear that in this area.
Wow. And Trina,
the neighbors are decent.
Okay, well that's good to hear.
Several of the people who live here are older, 70s, 80s, and have been here since the prime of Forest Lawn back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, they're proud Forest Lawn people.
But they are now selling and moving out.
Yeah.
And so with that, we're getting a lot more investors moving in and turning them into rental properties. So with the rental properties, you start to see a bit more of the transient population.
Okay, and you were asking why our client Reshma is selling this. She's simply selling it because the market has come up to where it needs to be to offload it, and she's just tired of the problems. This property itself, what was going on here? You were just telling us the story with people in the basement and stuff like that.
Before we moved in, the property sat vacant for about a year from what I was told, and because there was no fencing around the property, the homeless people in the area were using this as a traffic way that was off of the main streets and unlit. And after having been the property sitting vacant as long as it was, it made it accessible for them to break in unnoticed and had set up a camp in the basement. So basically there was a homeless situation, and the only reason it became known to the owners, and I think the leasing agency, was because they cut the gas line off of the garage, and suddenly the gas company contacted them that there was something going on with the heat and the gas in the property.
Wow, pretty scary.
So the actual gas meter was taken off of the house.
And we see these buyers coming from either Vancouver or Toronto, and they'll just snap these properties up because they don't even know the neighborhood. Just your take, because we see you have to be informed when you're getting into a neighborhood like this. So thank you for sharing this with us. But how long do you see? Because people say, no, Forest Lawn's getting better. They redid International Ave. They spent money on it. They got the bus service now, rapid bus service going up and down. How long, how many years do you think, because you live here, your personal opinion, it will take for this community to turn around?
So my family has been in Calgary for many years. My grandfather was one of the founders with Fort Calgary. He came out with the military.
Yeah.
My dad was born and raised here down in Inglewood. And Inglewood certainly went through its same sort of share of bikers, prostitution, drugs.
East Village.
And
did the
they
same thing.
talked about it for years that it was going to turn around. And a lot of people moved in and bought property thinking this is going to be the next it community. From my experience being in Inglewood, and I lived there for a number of years, it took about 40 years for it to actually turn itself around. They talked about that from about 1970, 72,
Yeah.
that neighborhood was going to be the next it community, that it would clean up, that it would be restored. But it wasn't until about 2006, 2007, I bought down there in 2005, and when I first moved into Inglewood, there was a drug house across the street,
Wow.
and one of the houses was being run as a brothel. It
Okay.
wasn't until around 2012 where I really started to see it clean up in Inglewood. So
Wow.
from 1972 to 2012.
And
It's
this,
inner city.
Yeah.
It's close to the river. It's close to all of the bottle depots. It's close to homeless centers. It's close to outreach centers.
Yeah.
So when you put those things in a neighborhood, which every neighborhood is now starting to have within Calgary
Right.
to try and disperse it,
yes.
it takes a bit of time. It takes its toll on a community.
Yeah. And that's why we wanted to interview you, because we know investors out there just jump in blindly to these properties in these areas. And it's just good to hear firsthand from someone that's lived in the neighborhood, knows what's going on. And what would you say to investors out there that want to invest in an area like Forest Lawn in Calgary? I mean, we would put people in here if they know what they're doing and they got the right guidance, and that's what Tim and I do for our investors. But what would you say to them that don't know the area and don't know what they're buying?
I think it doesn't matter which area you're buying into. Investment in real estate, people like to see it as a short-term investment, but it's long-term.
Yeah.
You think if you're going to buy real estate, you shouldn't anticipate seeing any real profit for the first 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, there is some straight up advice from Trina, who lives down in Forest Lawn. If you like what you saw today, we're trying to keep it.
Oh.
Okay, so we really want to showcase that just so you can see or hear it from someone who lived there.
Yeah.
And it really does come down to where you're buying, your investment property, and that is key. Like, we have to stress to you guys, even within a community like Southwood or Haysboro, there's two sides to that community. There's west of Elbow and there's east of Elbow. And the closer you are to the train tracks, you're going to, there's more density down that way. There's half duplexes, like rows of them. You're going to attract different sorts of tenants, and you're going to see some different sorts of things. So Tim and I, like, even in parts of Glenmorgan on the west side, like, it's a great community. There is some low-income housing, so you have to know where you're investing and what you're buying. They're not all the same, and we want to stress that.
Yeah, and this slide is keep your property in good repair. That property in that video was a very nice property. It attracted a really good tenant. That's what you want. Unfortunately, the property was in the wrong location. So no matter where your property is, you want to keep it in good repair to attract those great tenants. If it has a big yard or whatever, keep the landscaping going, keep the snow removal going. If the tenants aren't prepared to do that, well, you have to add it a little bit on their rent and have a contractor do it.
Mm-hmm.
You can have someone come in and every snowfall and shovel the sidewalks, but the tenant will ultimately be responsible for that by paying a little bit extra rent. So keeping that property in good repair, you're attracting those good tenants. All right, next one is, here it is, keep track of your revenues and expenses. We always tell all of our landlords, get yourself some sort of program to do it. If you keep it on your own little spreadsheet that you can share with your accountant or your bookkeeper, or even when you're doing your own taxes, you've got every expense and every revenue on one spreadsheet that happens to that, whatever happens to that property in that fiscal year, you need to do that because it is a little business. Each little property is a little business that you're running. And if you want it to run at a profit, you need to keep track of your numbers.
Yeah, for sure. And it might be as simple as just a Google Docs that you have, and every time money comes in, money goes out, it just goes on there. So, you know what, you know how that property is performing. And really, when we're buying investment properties, we are looking at whatever property we buy for our clients, we're looking at 100% occupancy. So I know for you guys out there, they factor in 3 months, worst case, 3 months worth of costs there, like expenses. So if you're if you're working out when you're running your numbers or your expenses, the rule of thumb is to have 3 months of expenses put away. So if you're cash flowing, you don't touch that cash flow until you've generated that. But 3 months to us, Tim, we've never had a property more than 1 month, if anything. Maybe 2 months on a property, but you should be buying good enough properties that you would live in yourself. We always say that, if you could see yourself living there, then chances are someone else will live there.
Yeah.
And so going into Forest Lawn, if you wouldn't live there, well, then don't go buy properties in Forest Lawn. And the other thing is, if you're living in Cranston, don't go buy a rental property in Tuscany. Like that driving will just drive you mad, okay? And one other tip, if you are meeting a tenant at one of your properties, get them to send you a text confirmation 30 minutes before, okay? You know what? Investors, Tim, they give up for a number of reasons, and the biggest reason is that the tenant's upsetting them. So limit that. You put the responsibility back on them. You either do an open house where 5 tenants are coming at once. So and Tim, always 1 or 2 tenants aren't showing up, right?
Yeah.
And always one tenant for some reason is ridiculously early. I don't know why this happens, but there's always a tenant early, and normally that tenant doesn't even rent the place. That's what gets me all the time. And then there's always someone running late. They're coming in hot, right? And so, as Tim said, you want to just go with your gut feeling on those people, but make sure that they're treating you like a business person as well, and confirming that they're going to be there. Right?
Yeah. And also, if you're not going to manage your own property and you have to hire a property manager, make sure you hire the right property manager. And unfortunately, they're not all the same. A lot of our clients have run into issues with the large institutional property managers, the big companies that like to manage whole buildings. They also, run condominium corporations at the same time. So they don't really want to deal with your one little basement suite that you have out in Cranston. That's not their priority. They don't really make a whole lot of money off of that. Yes, they may be charging 10 to 20% of your rent. It's a lot of money to you as a landlord, but it's not a lot of money to them as a big institutional property manager. So, if you're getting a property manager, make sure you interview 2 or 3, do your research, make sure that they can accommodate you, and make sure that their fee is worth it. Because the regular property management companies out there, like I said, they're charging 10 to 20% of your rent. If your rent is $2,000 a month for your upstairs and say $1,500 for your downstairs, that's $3,500 total rent. Guess what? The property manager is charging you a minimum of $350 a month.
Yeah.
Plus 1 month's rent to place a tenant. So it's $2,000 to place an upstairs tenant and $1,500 to place a downstairs tenant. So that's a big chunk of change. So you have to really, really manage that property management company.
Yeah, exactly. We always say that. And, some of my properties that got damaged over the years, Tim, I had property managers in place. And when we went to go check them out, it wasn't good.
Yeah. So we do have an alternative to that. Just this year, we started providing property services, crew leasing and crew property services to our clients. We mentioned that we do take on the management of our clients' rental properties if they so choose.
Yeah. And you know what? The thing with our service is our landlords or the properties that they own, we actually care about them. The landlords, we actually treat them like friends, not just clients. And with them being friends, their assets mean the world to us. So the tenants that we choose mean the world to us as well. And in saying that, it's black and white when we manage a property. We can call the tenant out and say, well, this is not what we signed up for. And we have no problem going. We even go speak to tenants that we're not even managing.
Yeah.
You know, like we're going to go meet this couple in Marta Loop or in this condo with noise complaints. We're not even managing that property. We went to Winston Heights last month to talk to a client that was stressed, and all of this stress can be taken away. Tenants issues or renting out should not stop you from becoming an investor. There is too much money to be made. I'm telling you, Alex, who bought a property last night, has just created $50,000 for himself just by buying a property, and he's not even going to manage it, right? He uses us as his property manager to select those tenants, put people in. But we do it because we didn't want the investor not to take action. And we realized that, you know what, we've got burnt, Tim, from property managers managing our properties. And so we've put systems in place. We have a whole checklist on how we're selecting our tenants, the move-in inspection, the whole process, and making sure that they pay on time and look after the property. That is key, is those people have to look after the property so you don't have these huge costs later on.
Yeah, so we charge $97 a door. We don't make any money at that. And for our tenant placement services, it's $9.97 per door to place a tenant. Moving on, you also have to know the laws of your province. Now, every landlord that we train or that we put into a property, we refer them to the Residential Tenancies Act Handbook, which is a publication by Service of Alberta. And what it does is it condenses the Residential Tenancies Act, which is a very, very dry piece of legislation. If you want to read it, go ahead. But this handbook will tell you your rights and your tenants' rights in a readable form. If anybody wants a copy of it, we can email it to you. Just send us an email. We'll email you the RTA handbook. But what it does is it tells you your rights. And what we're fortunate with in Alberta, as I spoke about it earlier, is landlords in Alberta have quite a bit more rights than a lot of other provinces across the country. In Ontario, you know, it's very, very tenant friendly. BC is very tenant friendly. What we find here is that the legislation is very, very reasonable, and it understands that, you know, the landlords, as long as they're not breaking any law, they have quite a few rights to manage their property and manage who's in their property.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, in BC and I know in Manitoba, like people were selling rental properties out there because interest rates went up. They couldn't even jack the rents up on their tenants. Where in Alberta, once the fixed term lease is up, you can do whatever you want. So you can jack it like, you know, $400, which we've seen, you know, and unfortunately in places like Manitoba and BC, there's a percentage that can go off and it's minimum. Like they couldn't even, we had investors had to sell because they couldn't keep their properties because they're underwater. So that was a pretty sad situation. But, and once again, for anyone on the call tonight, if you ever have a problem, we love this stuff. So if you ever have a problem with tenants and you want to get advice, Tim and I are here. Like we're honest about this. We will tell you straight up the do's and don'ts and what, you know, what should be right and what shouldn't. So if you are on the call and you ever need advice and you're not using our services, you can call us for advice. No problem.
Yeah. So bottom line is familiarize yourself with your rights as a landlord, and you will be able to go through any dispute with tenants with ease because you'll know exactly where you're coming from. Also, if you are going to manage your own properties, get the right training. That our landlord kit, which we give to every one of our clients that buys a rental property, we run them through training, which is all aspects of our landlord kit. We teach them how to get the property rented, how to attract great tenants, how to keep those tenants, what to do in a dispute, how to do a move-in, move-out form, how to keep records. Everything is in our landlord kit, and it's key to managing your own property.
It is key. You need to understand, once again, you're got a sizable asset there and you're dealing with people and you want to get it right. You want to know how to run that business and have a successful portfolio. So we offer that. I mean, it's mandatory for anyone that rents a property through us and is not using our property management services. it's actually mandatory that they go through this with us. And for the people that do, they actually get a video on our course on the landlord training, just so they understand where they're at and what their rights are.
Yeah. So what we mentioned at the beginning of the seminar is people or landlords who were concerned that they couldn't get their properties rented out for the rents that they could last year, the year before. They didn't have as many candidates coming in when they put a rental ad on RentFaster or on Facebook Marketplace. Well, we always try to provide little tips and strategies to these landlords on how to attract those tenants, how to get them in there. And there's a lot of things that you can do instead of just posting an ad. You can post your ad. I have a 2-bedroom apartment. The rent is $2,000 a month. Give me a call. Sometimes that doesn't work because you have a lot of competition. You might have 3 or 4 other units in that same building that are identical to yours that people are charging the same amount of rent. So you need to differentiate yourself from those other landlords to attract the tenants and make them rent your property as opposed to someone else.
Yeah, and for example, the place in Glacier Ridge that we got a call on the weekend for us to manage, we didn't take it on because the rental properties, the 35 basement suites for rent in Glacier Ridge, most of them were offering 1 month rent free. So that's how bad it is up there.
Yeah.
And the landlord that we were talking to, he was at 1,200. We told him to go down to 1,000, and he didn't want to do that. So we just knew we were not going to get it rented anytime soon. And so at the end of the day, you have to offer incentives. You know what? I always say this, we've been saying it for years. I can't believe how cheap 50-inch TVs are. I think, Tim, you can even get a 75-inch TV. Instead of giving a month's rent, for some reason, tenants love big TVs. Tim and I can never understand it, but they love their big TVs.
In every room.
In every room, which is which is amazing, right? I mean, geez. So you know what? Next time it's the sales are on, if there is a TV and you want an incentive, just throw the TV in with it. You get a free TV, sign for 2 years, you pay rent on time for 2 years, you look after the property, you get to keep the TV, right? The TV is going to cost you, I don't even know, you'd have to go on. I was thinking $500 and you get a massive one, right? They're unbelievable. So, and tenants, some young tenants, not even young, they like gaming. So maybe look at the Sony PlayStation, I don't know, do something like that and throw that in. Who cares, right? You don't have to do that. That would get them more excited than the 1 month free, I think. So, but offer incentives, adjust the rental price. This is key. So when people ask us, how are we going to get it rented? Pricing is key, right? You got to see what value you're giving. If the value isn't there, you have to adjust the price. Enhance the property appeal. So yes, like the property we bought, I know I'm talking about Alex because we just bought it last night. The front yard is a mess, right? Like the guy built, what did he build there? A shed?
Outdoor bar,
outdoor kitchen, bar. And we've kind of told ours, just get rid of everything. And it's built through a tree. I don't know if you noticed that. The tree goes through the middle of the shed and the leaves stick out. Like it's hilarious. All that has to come down. You need to go get some seed and put just grass down, and then it's done, right?
Yeah.
Like it looks pretty.
It's not a huge cost. It's just you taking that stuff to the dump.
Yeah. So enhance the property, make it look good, improve marketing efforts. I mean, if the pictures aren't great, you know, it's not a lot of money to get professional photos if you don't have them. It's like $120. Get a photographer in, you've got it for a lifetime. And you know, the best thing about RentFaster, once you load an ad up, it stays there for life. You just press, you know, rented, and then you press, you know, activate, you know, when you go again. The last one is consider short-term rentals. Once again, if you're not cash flowing, you're not trying. Students are dying for places here. They can't afford them. Rooms rent for $1,000 per room right now. So $1,000, you can cash flow on that. You can get 2 students, 3 students into a property. You could do Airbnb. You can furnish the property with used furniture off Kijiji or Facebook Marketplace and charge an extra, you know, if the rent's $2,200, you get $2,600 for furnished rentals. You could do 3-month lease. You could do 1 month lease. It's totally up to you what you do, but you have to be on top of it.
Yeah. So we've given a lot of tips and a lot of strategies on how to attract good tenants, how to keep good tenants. keep your vacancies down. What we got to stress is that the rental market, just like any other market, is going to go up and down. We've been riding this up wave for a long time now, the last three and a half, 4 years, where rents just went straight up for that period of time. Well, guess what? We're going to enter a little adjustment right now. Rents will fall a little bit. So what you have to do as a landlord is differentiate yourself from all those other landlords out there. Offer a better product, offer a better rental rate. Screen the tenants a little more, offer incentives. You need to do that little bit extra to get those great tenants so that your place is not the one that sits vacant for 1 or 2 months.
Yeah, or as an investor, you have to do that little bit extra to get that better property. I see one of our longtime investors, Mark Kelly's on the call. His son, Daniel Kelly, he took our advice and went out to Aaron Woods. What is it? Life is better in Aaron Woods. Life is better in Aaron Woods. We found this out. But anyway, Daniel got a walkout suited bungalow, raised bungalow or bi-level in Aaron Woods. And this thing has a wow factor because it has massive windows. It has a room in the basement that has all windows looking out onto a beautiful courtyard. So you have to look for those wow factors in these properties so then you stand out from day one. Okay, we're going to just speed through this for the new people out there. If you haven't read our book, 1 Million Reasons to Buy Real Estate, I will put it in the chat. We did promise you that you get a free download. It is a great book. It goes through the core fundamentals of investing in real estate. It's free. It's a must read.
Yeah, so download it, have a read, and that'll lead you to, I went too far. That'll lead you to our next book, Fearless Real Estate. We wrote this during COVID. To help our investors understand all the different strategies that would go into investing in real estate. And we go through our clients' stories and how they had success with all the different real estate investment strategies. We talk about flipping, we talk about the BRRRR strategy, we talk about buy and hold, we talk about Airbnb, we talk about every different strategy in this book. And it's very concise and informative. And we've had clients tell us that it's launched them into investing in real estate.
Okay, the next thing is our Calgary Real Estate membership, which does come with one property to rent out, which is awesome. This is like a starter kit for people that want to get into investing or continue to grow their portfolio. It goes through things like joint ventures or raising capital or using hard money or using the seller's money, vendor take-back loans. It goes through lease options, rent to own. Mark Kelly, who is on the call tonight, features in one of our rent to own videos, which is awesome. We showcase what he did and how he made money and how we selected the property for him and the tenants. It's something that you can do to cash flow for sure. We go through Airbnb stuff. We go through all sorts of things. We run analysis. We have our joint venture agreements on how to buy with other people. It's $97 per month. And the best thing about it is that we get to help you with that $97 per month, help you rent out your first property, which is awesome. And then the next thing, if you want to see what this has done for many, many investors out there, go to Pro TV, check it out. You'll see for yourselves if investing's for you. We hope it is, and we hope to be part of your team. When you buy an investment property through us or any property at all, we don't just buy the property and say, see you later. We're actually there along the ride with you.
Yeah, and on this channel, you'll see all kinds of client interviews, property walkthroughs, different investment strategies, everything you need to get you started, everything you need. If you're looking for some information on Airbnbs, search out our Airbnb video on our Crew TV channel, and there's tons of information there to help you out. Okay, so where do you go from here if you're new? Just send us an email. We can set up a one-on-one meeting in our boardroom here and have a chat, set out a real estate investment plan for you, and take you a little further on your real estate investing career. If you're experienced, you just need help with something along the way, give us a call, give us a text. We can help you out. So that's our seminar for today. We want to thank everybody for joining us. We didn't go overtime this time, which is amazing. I kind of had to reel him in a little bit, but you know, it happens sometimes. There's our contact info. If you want to set up a meeting with us, that's great. If not, we'll have another seminar in 2 weeks' time. We'll release that tomorrow. And we hope to see you guys all at our next seminar. It was fun talking about this because it's what we do every day.
Yeah, tell your friends about us. Go to work tomorrow. Say, hey, you got to get on this thing. Hope you liked it. We want to make you money when you buy your next rental property. See you soon.
See you, everybody.